Welcome everyone to another awesome episode of the What's changed?
Well, I thought you were going to say the old one.
I know I was. All right, let's start that again. Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of the Fishing Loons podcast, brought to you by the Average Ontario Anglers. That's right, we rebranded just the podcast. We're still average, don't you worry. But yeah, we wanted to. If you listened to the last episode, we talked about that as well. But we're excited to have our second episode here. And this one is a pretty fun one because it's all about fishing advice. And you know how much Jess and I love to give advice. This is not our advice. And so we're going to nitpick it to crap. But thanks for sending it in, everyone. Before we get too far in the episode, though, if you haven't listened to us before, we are based out of Ontario, and this is a fishing podcast. So if you didn't know it was a fishing podcast yet, well, I don't know how you reached us, but thanks for coming. Stick around. My name is Andrew, and as usual, we have Jesse with us as well. And to start us off on this episode, Jesse is going to have an interesting fishing fact for us before we get into the real meat and potatoes, as they say.
All right. So the interesting fishing fact today, I thought I'd kind of link it into something that I did recently. I was telling Andrew a little bit ago, my wife actually booked a concert for me and her to go to on the weekend in downtown Toronto. I say Toronto because that's how the performers said it. They said, "Oh, it's great to be here in Toronto." And I'm like, they're clearly not from here. We say Toronto.
You're not from around here, are you?
We don't pronounce the second T. But anyway, we went to one of those candlelight concerts, which sounds super weird. But my wife, I'm very hard to shop for. It's either fishing stuff or that's about it. So she always wants to get me to concerts, and she knows I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan. And now, if you don't know who Hans Zimmer is, he's a master composer. He's scored over 150 films. Now, Andrew, I'm going to name some films, and tell me if you knew that these were Hans Zimmer. Inception.
I didn't know Inception was.
Yep. Lion King, the first one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Gladiator.
I did not know he did Gladiator.
Interstellar, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yep.
The Dark Knight trilogy.
Yes.
Dune.
I didn't know. I thought it was someone else, but I knew it was good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an amazing one too.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah. Another like war movies like Dunkirk, which was an awesome movie. But he is very, very talented. For instance, the movie Dune, the guys that were playing, they were very talented. They were explaining that he actually made like a new form of like harmonics or something just to play that music because it wasn't supposed to be like anything that was like from Earth. Like it was supposed to be like a new style of music, but also just played on like cellos and violins. So he's very like he's a genius. Anyway, he actually has
I'm picturing you with an interaction like, look, there's Hans Zimmer. There's Jess in the corner. Ah!
I wish I could sing that good. But how popular is Hans Zimmer? Well, he has actually over 8 billion streams on Spotify, which is considerably more than we have. So let's just say he's pretty famous. But anyway, long story short, we were watching this, and I really love the Hans Zimmer like Interstellar soundtrack. I play it all the time at work. It's just like so powerful and amazing. If you've never seen that movie, definitely watch it. But they started off playing this song called Time from Inception, and it's a beautiful piece, 2 violins, viola, and a cello. And they were playing it. It was so peaceful. And I was like, this is amazing. Like I had the goosebumps. It was so nice. But then when they started getting into some of the stuff like from Dunkirk, like the war ones, the guy playing the cello, you know how they have the bow with the strings on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's playing it like very silently. And then I guess it's like a scene when like a bunch of tanks come in, and he just started beating his cello with the bow, making all these crazy noises. And as he did this, the strings on his bow were like snapping off or like coming off. And as he was playing, they were just whipping around like a fly line. It was like, and then between like sets, you'd see him just like ripping them off his bow. And I was like, they're actually really strong. And it got me thinking, this is the transition, but it got me thinking, what are some of the craziest size fish caught on the absolute lightest line, like the bowstrings? Like those bowstrings apparently only have like 3-pound test. I looked it up. They're like 3-pound test. That's
I'm
the
like,
transition.
when is this going to get to fishing?
I know, right? When is it going to talk about fishing?
Segue. You're just like, and after this, we went for a ride on this cool 2-wheeled electric vehicle. Segway, fishing lines.
Anyway, if you ever see an advertisement for these candlelight concerts, definitely go. It's amazing. I like highly recommend. But anyway, so I started looking up some some of the light line records. Andrew's just blown away by that transition, but you know what?
Yep.
Sometimes we gotta, people are like, we like to get to know Jesse and Andrew. Now you know I like cello music. I didn't know this myself, but okay. But what are some of the light line records? I know me and Andrew over the years, especially when we were younger, we did a lot of like fishing with ultralights. Remember that phase we were in when we were young, Andrew? And I had that 6.6 Shimano Claris ultralight, and I'd always have a little 1,000 reel loaded with 4-pound line. We'd catch like carp, like full-size carp on it, and like steelhead, and we'd try to catch the biggest fish possible on like an ultralight.
I remember that well because you had that rod, and then I went out and bought the exact same one.
Yeah, it was great. And unfortunately, that rod broke in my car many years ago. That was the old Shimano Claris gray rods. Anyway, so I started looking into some light line records, and some of these will actually blow your mind. It's insane. Doing a lot of bass and muskie fishing the last few years, worrying about my line snapping isn't really a thing. When you're muskie fishing, you're not worried generally that your 100 or 80 pound braid is going to snap. Mm-hmm. Or you're bass fishing, you're flipping like in the weeds, you're using 50 or 65 pound braid. Like you're not ever worried about that. You just kind of set the hook really hard and winch them in. But some of these things are pretty insane. So listen to this. First of all, the light line records, they're actually compiled by the IGFA. You know what that stands for, Andrew? Andrew knows.
International Global Federation of Anglers or something like that.
International Game Fish Association. And they have a whole bunch of different records. They have records for size, weight, line, all that stuff. It's actually a really cool website. I'll link it below. Definitely check it out. There's all kinds of crazy records that you can look up. Some of them in Canada too. But the IGFA has line class records, meaning that the fish is certified based on the maximum breaking strength of fishing line. And they actually have certain lines that you have to use. You can't just be like, yeah, I was using this, because it has to be certified that you actually use a certain amount of line. So they have all kinds of different records, but they have line class ranges from sub 1 pound test to heavy offshore classes of of line. So it's pretty cool. You may think though, why would people ever try to beat these records? I know everyone, maybe they're trying to catch like the world record largemouth or the world record muskie, and it's, generally with bass, it's about weight. You're like, oh, I'm trying to catch that, in Ontario. I'm trying to catch that 11 pound, northern largemouth. That would be the record. But these people, they still want to catch big fish, but they're trying to break the record by using the lightest, thinnest line possible to catch the biggest fish possible. Why would people try to do this? Well, for one, it is a reward for technical skill. It takes a lot of skill to catch a big fish on light line, right, Andrew? You're a BFS guy. It encourages precision over power. There's, when you're chucking big musky baits and it flies through the air, hits the water, and it's almost like, a bomb hitting the water. But when you're fishing with light line, it's not like that at all. It's very precision, right? Which can also be very relaxing. Let's be serious. It also separates luck from repeatable angling ability. So anyone can randomly catch a world record fish. Like you could go out trolling for muskie and, Lake St. Clair, for instance, and catch the world record muskie. And not that much skill necessarily went into you reeling it in. But if you were to catch that fish on like 4 pound line, that requires skill. I don't recommend that you do that. Anyway, it requires a lot of things. Drag tuning down to a super precise amount. Your knots have to be on point. Like you can't legit just tie a bunch of overhands like my dad. You have to legit have some good knots. And you have to know a lot of things. Like you have to know how to fight a fish. You have to know about rod angles, pressure curves, like all this stuff to get these fish in. So I thought we could talk quick about this guy. His name is Art Weston. And he was like a master of this. He's a modern benchmark for light line record fishing. And this happened, and it'll blow your mind, Andrew. So he just caught, this is recently too. This is like his life goal, is like catching giant fish on light lines. This is his thing. But he caught a 153 pound alligator gar. Guess how much line? Guess how much poundage of line? What is the lightest line you would target a 153 pound alligator gar? Now, first of all, Andrew, describe an alligator gar.
Picture an alligator and then put fins on it so it's faster in the water.
Yes, they're absolute, like they're legit river monsters. Like they're terrifying. I think the lightest line I would even throw myself would be like 40 pound mono. Like
I was gonna say, like, if it was braid, I'd probably go like 80, but like I would want stretch or something with it. So I'd probably going like 35 to 50 pound mono in that range.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think this guy named Art Weston
did? Like
did?
10 pound?
Keep going.
No way.
Keep going.
4 pound.
Nope. Keep going.
I was being very like cheeky, like I'm going to drop it to less than half of that amount. 2 pound.
2-pound test line.
My word.
I have used 2-pound test line leaders
What did
back
he do?
in the
Just let
day.
it die on the line of old age and be like,
I have
got
no
it.
idea. I honestly still don't believe this, but I did check it and it's legit. Apparently it was certified. He caught a 153-pound alligator gar on 2-pound test line, and it took over 3 hours to get this fish in.
Yeah.
I honestly think that this fish, if it even like sneezed when it had the line in its mouth, that line would snap.
Yeah.
Like 2-pound line, if you literally hold it, like I used to use it for leaders for steelhead fishing. I don't even think I used it. I had some back in the day before fluorocarbon was really popular.
We've gone for perch with it and snapped perch off on hook sets using ultralight perch rods.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, you are afraid of breaking a jumbo off on 2-pound test. 53-pound alligator gar. It says it's not sure, but he says it's likely the largest freshwater fish ever landed on 2-pound test.
I believe it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, you would guess though that obviously this wasn't luck. This fish was targeted, the gear selected intentionally, and the fight managed super precisely. I just picture like him in a boat, and there's like 5 other boats around just to like be there for support. You know,
just 10 drones feeding information. Be like, move 5 degrees west.
Yeah. There's just a guy in the back just dabbing his head with a paper towel for the sweat.
Yeah. What if it's just like he has 1 foot of 2-pound backing, but then he's using a 100-foot long, like 50-pound leader? What if that's the case?
I don't.
My main line is only 2 pounds. It never got down that far to the reel, but
anyway, that was actually fairly recent that guy did that. He actually had another record that was it was like a spotted bass that he caught on 2-pound line. But after I read the alligator gar one, I was like, who cares about a 4-pound spotted bass or something like that? So there's this other guy named George Hogan, and he was more on the saltwater side of things. He's an old timer, like an OG in this kind of like line class record kind of game. These are some of his highlights of his records. He's caught blue marlin, 200-pound blue marlin on 8-pound line. He's caught 140-pound tarpon on 6-pound line. And he's caught giant, it doesn't say the size, but like very large striped marlin on 2-pound test as well, which you see these fish when they hook them in saltwater and they're just like jumping 20 feet out of the air and then landing beside the boat on like 10-pound test or less. Like I don't have the heart to do that.
What I don't get is the marlin with their huge bill that they have barbs on the outside edges, and the bait is in the fish's mouth and it's swimming back and forth. How did not once that line get nicked? Because with any tension on 6 or 8-pound test, you get like a little hook that's like ding, or like that line's gone 100%. Like how fortunate, like as much as yes, what you said before, it will separate dumb luck from skill. There's a heck of a lot of dumb luck, it sounds like, on these guys actually landing these records. Like how many failed times did he lose fish while trying these things, you know?
I was going to say maybe that guy that caught that huge 150-pounder on 2-pound line, like that was like his like 57,000th attempt. And the fish just had like a whole like bunch of like hooks and line in its mouth, so much that it was so weighed down that the fish just gave up. It was like, all right, just reel me in.
I would almost expect it more. It's like, oh, he caught this fish and the fight lasted 5 seconds because they are ready with the net. You know how like you catch a muskie on a figure 8 and it's like, see you scoop it right away?
Yeah.
It's like, I can see that maybe.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's actually fighting these fish on these light lines for hours at a time and not losing them over that time, that's crazy.
I wonder if there's some kind of like conspiracy about this. Cause like logically like this, I don't know if like this is definitely unethical, but imagine I go in first. Okay. You have your 2-pound line on your rod. I go in first with like legit tuna gear. I hook this alligator gar and I fight it and I get it tired and then I release it. And then you go in there and you catch it immediately and it's already tired. You know what I mean? How could you prove that? I'm not saying that guy did that, but I mean, like, if I was going to cheat, that's what I would do. Not that I would cheat.
But I mean, like, trying to get a tired fish to bite again. Like, I've had it where you release a bass and he swims into your crankbait you have sitting in the water when you drop it in again. And they'll swim into it and get snagged usually. But I don't think I've ever experienced something immediately eating something else after a fight. Like,
have
maybe
you ever
mid-fight.
Caught a rock bass?
That's true. I've caught the same rock bass 3 times in a row.
Maybe alligator gar.
That's
just
a very
large rock bass. Anyway, so this kind of goes into my next and final point is why light line records can be a bad idea. So obviously, like the things that are so-called good about it is It's extreme challenge. It forces you to be totally focused, and it encourages, a deep gear of like your knowledge, everything, your knots, your test curves on the rod, like everything has to be legit perfect. It also makes for a pretty epic story. You're like, oh, I caught imagine telling your boys, you're like, hey, I caught an 8-pound bass on 2-pound test. You'd be like the legend of the cottage, right? But what are the bad things about that? Well, for things that I would think about, oftentimes, like being a muskie angler, me and Andrew, we know that like you're not supposed to fight muskie long. You're not supposed to fight them in super hot temperatures because it can actually kill them. They're mean looking fish, but they're pretty delicate fish. And that goes to a lot of fish, right? So extended fight times increase lactic acid buildup and raise post-release mortality risks. So you're fighting a fish for hours. Like I know some of these fish are just like beasts, like the alligator gars are beasts. I'm sure you could literally like drag it out of the water for days and throw it back in, it would swim away. There's the extended fight times are probably not the best for fish. It also points out, like we said, repeated attempts. Lost fish aren't neutral outcomes. So oftentimes, say you tried to do this and you broke it off. Now you're leaving this fish with a hook in its mouth and line hanging out of it, right? So,
and it's still tired with lactic acid buildup and mortality rate.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is it's kind of like an ethical thing, right? So like, as we mentioned, all these bad things, it is kind of an ethical gray area. Well, a lot of guys would be like, oh no, that's awesome, I'd love to do it. And then some other people would be like, that's ridiculous. Like you're just abusing the fish at this point. I get both sides. I personally think that it's a bit crazy. Like I wouldn't target a giant 150-pound fish on 2-pound line. That's just myself. I actually want to catch it. Maybe this guy has caught hundreds or thousands before now he's just trying to challenge himself. But me personally, I always think in any type of fishing that we say use the rightest line, not the lightest line. So that's how I'm going to end that. But if Andrew ever does catch a giant fish on 2-pound test, I will give him a hearty slap on the back and say, good job.
I liked that. I think we should have, when you edit this podcast, so Jesse does the editing, I think you should put in some Hans Zimmer background music when you're talking about some of the things and some of the crescendos of like the lightest line and how big it was.
I wish I could.
Good things.
We get copyright struck.
And then you superimpose some candles in the background, reduce the lighting, just like bring the contrast right down.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Editing tips for you.
Yeah. But anyway, make sure you go to one of those candle lights. It was cool. It was very cool. Yeah.
If it was me telling that story, starting off the same way, it'd be like, it's like, yes. And then his string snapped and I requested it after the show. And now I've made pike leaders out of this cello string.
Just walk up to the guy and be like, so what's the biggest fish you've caught on one of those? He's just like, what are you talking about?
Excellent. I liked that. Hopefully our listeners did too. Write us a review. Let us know if you did. Next up, we're going to go into our main topic. So again, this one, we're going to be covering a bunch of different subjects kind of thing, all of which are based on people's advice. Now, if you're anything like me, sometimes you hate getting advice. Like sometimes advice is pretty stupid. Sometimes you get advice and you're like, I didn't think of that. I'm going to start doing that. And then your life is better. So let's take a look at some of these. And again, if we start roasting you because on your advice that you gave, it's because we liked it so much, we saw it had entertainment value, and so we started talking about it. So it's still a win for you. Don't worry. Our first one here is the advice that fishing is not expensive. I don't know much advice. Yeah, it sounds more like a bold statement more than advice.
Now, to be fair, just to point out, this is advice. People sent these in. This is the worst advice people have told them. So we're not going to roast these guys, but this is the worst advice that people have sent to people.
And this is from Brian. Brian went fishing again. Fishing is not expensive. What do you think, Jesse? Would you agree with that statement? You should get into fishing. It's not expensive. It's a great hobby. It's cheap.
No, it's super cheap, and no, it is expensive. It can be both ways for sure. I feel like when you become obsessed with fishing, which a lot of us are, it can be very expensive because we're dumb. But you could also do it very cheaply too.
Absolutely. You can go out there with your red and white bobber, the pack of hooks, a little box of worms, and a Zebco combo. And by all means, you can have a blast sitting on the dock at the campsite and catch some sunfish and some bass off the dock. Absolutely. That's cheap. You're out the door buying everything brand new for what? $40? Like, that's not bad. That's pretty cheap. And you use that same line for probably 8 years because it's blue strand and you're going for sunfish. So who cares?
Yep.
Fishing can be cheap. But like anything, if you get into the hobby, you can also become, buying the more bougie stuff, getting more expensive. And pretty soon you're spending $40 on just, upgraded treble hooks or that one Japanese JDM bait, like, $40 for this BFS topwater. I gave Jesse a gift and he just held it up. It's a nice big jerkbait.
It sounds expensive.
It was. So it can be either really cheap or it could be very expensive. But there's a lot of things that people don't think about. You might think, oh, fishing's cheap, but if you look at someone who does this for a hobby, they have their boat out, they're doing it, there's so many other hidden fees. Gas for boats, like, gas isn't cheap, okay? Boats are not fuel efficient. Like,
No.
what you put in your car and drive 700 kilometers with, you put in a boat and you drive 80. Like, it can be, that's not exact math there. Don't quote me on that. But they're not as fuel efficient as like a car. There's a lot of drag and stuff to the water. There's boat launch fees because it's very hard, especially down in the city, close to the GTA. Finding a free launch is next to impossible. With a canoe, sure, again, that's a cheaper option. And then you have to, again, park after the launch. You got to pay for the parking. You have your fishing license that you buy every year. You have to replace your line. You have all your hooks, your terminal tackle. You have the lures that you like. You caught that one fish in a chatterbait. Now you own 70 chatterbaits because you hear us talking about them all the time. Those jackhammers aren't cheap.
And they just went up in price too.
And then even still, like, as you get into the hobby or you do more things with fishing, like, I love BFS. You can't really get like a nice BFS combo for like super budgety. You can get budget combos and they cost about as much as a nice regular bass fishing combo. And then, you have to get into, if you want to go musky fishing, great. But now you need a musky rod and a musky reel and musky lures and a musky tackle box because musky lures don't fit in your regular tackle box. So all these other things, they add up quick. Every time you want to use a new technique, you want to get into jig fishing. Well, now you want a jig box to hold your jigs better. And those jig boxes cost about $70.
And a jig. I was going to say a jig rod. Well, like, look, here's a perfect example. If you've listened to this podcast for any amount of time, you know that I like jerk baits. I love jerk baits. I literally have a jerk bait box.
Yep.
That holds jerk baits. But
Only
the thing is, this jerk bait box is not big enough to hold all my jerk baits. It only holds like 15? Like, that's not enough. How many do I use every day when I go? Like 2.
So obviously you can do budget. You can have one rod and reel. That's what Jess and I started with when we were kids, when we were younger. You can have a small tackle box. I had my little blue one that, had the tray that comes right out of the top. And those are, they work. That works. And if you're getting into it, that's fantastic. Then you have your average angler where now you want to have a frog rod because you like doing that. You want a nice little topwater and jerkbait rod and maybe something for flipping jigs. So you got a few combos, and that's just for bass fishing. Then you want to get into more species and stuff like that. And then you get into, stuff like Jesse and I, where we're, like goblins, tackle goblins, like, gold. We're just like, we had dedicated like rods for like, this is my chatterbait rod. I only throw chatterbaits on this rod.
Yeah. And I have 3 of them. I was just looking at this because like my rod's right behind me. I was like, yeah, I have this combo. This is a 6.9 medium light Daiwa Tatula jerkbait rod and this Daiwa SV70. This is literally, I only use it for jerkbaits. Like, how sad is that? I have a combo that's legit just for jerkbaits, and I don't toss nothing else on it because I have similar combos that do almost exactly the same thing, but I needed something shorter because having a rod 2 inches shorter will make a difference when fishing a jerkbait. It's a sickness. 100%. Like, how many times you go in the tackle shop, you're like, oh, that's a nice rod. And then I'm like, I got literally the same size. And like, I have a 7.2 medium heavy at home. And this one's 7.3. I'll be able to cast farther. It's like, you'll never notice an inch. It's sad, but I love it.
Yep. It's, hey, if you enjoy it, why not?
You know what they say? It's only a problem if you're trying to stop.
But what's some things that can help keep it cheaper? Some good advice then to take away from all this is if you can buy some used stuff, you can buy used lures, usually pretty good price.
Yeah.
Some people will try and charge way more than they should. So to keep an eye out, don't get gypped. But even like tackle swaps, you can find used reels, used rods, even looking at what you used last year. I know me, I love buying tackle, and tackle shows come around and stuff like that. I'm like, time for me to go hit up all the booze that I love and buy some more lures this year. Another big thing is take note of what you used last. I have this massive tackle box that comes with me every time I go fishing, and I'll pull out, 5 different trays because I have the 5 lures I use in 5 different trays. In reality, I could definitely go out and fish a full day with multiple different techniques with one tackle tray. I could. Yep. I do enjoy having all my baits with me. I'm not going to stop. It's my problem. But again, keeping note, it helps me now. I go into stores and like, do I need this? Is this going to fit a new roll? Can I even justify the fact that I can fish this any differently than the 5 other things I own that are just like this? So stuff like that, keep it in mind. And maybe, just maybe, you'll save some money on some tackle, and you can buy that extra combo that you want instead.
Yeah. And I feel, though, just to pat ourselves on the back, the last, I'd say 2 years, but especially last year, me and Andrew, so many times we've gone to the tackle store and we'll be like walking around with a lure. We're like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this. You're looking at it the whole time. And then as you're walking around, you kind of look at it and you're like, it's so similar to something I already have. And maybe it's just a different brand, or maybe it's a slightly different color. And you're like, will this actually matter? Does it matter? I have a black one instead of a dark blue one. It doesn't really matter generally, unless you're unless money's on the line. Maybe it could be important. But we're not fishing the Bassmaster Classic. So we've done pretty good. I know the last few years, me and Andrew have been like, do I actually need this? And we're like, nah. And then we put it out. Me and Andrew have walked out of the tackle shop so many times without buying anything. Now, to be fair, we go all the time. So that ratio is actually pretty bad, but
I only buy 20 lures a month, but I'm at the tackle shop 25 times.
That's
5 of those times I don't buy anything.
Yeah, it's getting better.
Our next advice comes from Ben the Paddlehead, and Ben's a cool guy. I like him a lot, and I feel like he was told this, and now he started telling us this. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But he submitted, "This is the only bait you'll ever need." How many times have you heard that from that one old guy at the boat launch?
Yeah,
using a glow bobber and a little Cleo tipped with a minnow underneath of it.
Yeah. No, I've heard that so many times, especially, and it's usually old timers that tell you that. I'm sure some young people will, but it's always that old guy that slowly trolls past you, just, dragging a crawler rig for walleye when you're bass fishing. And he's like, oh, you need a worm. It's like
using that Mepps spinner, that Mepps Comet with the minnow,
yeah,
minnow bait on the back.
I've probably been told the lures themselves I've been told that about for multi-species would be definitely a Mepps spinner. I've been told that about a ball head jig with a twister tail. And I've been told that about just the original floating Rapala. That's all you need. But yeah.
And to be fair, all those things are very versatile baits. They will catch pretty much any species out there. They have caught every species out there, basically.
Yeah.
But again, why do people believe that? Why do they feel the need to share that information? Probably because they caught fish on it, they gained their confidence, and they've never fished anything else. Now they think that's the only thing that works.
Yeah.
We have the opposite problem, as we discussed the last time. We have so many things, and we're constantly switching baits.
Yeah.
But we don't know what works anymore.
We catch lots of fish on lots of random lures, just not a lot on each one because we're always switching.
But to take an example then, that ball head jig and twister tail, I would say is probably everyone has it in their box. Every grandpa has it in their box. And every great grandpa has it. As soon as Mr. Twister Company invented it, I guarantee that has been featured in every single tackle box since that time, right? And it works. I have caught a bunch of fish on it. I've been outfished by other people using them sometimes. But if I take them and I say, okay, that's great, you want to use that? And let's go fish slop. Now who's going to win? I'm using a hollow body frog.
Yeah.
So they're not as versatile. So keep in mind, you can have some favorite baits and absolutely enjoy using them. But depending on water clarity, the depth, the weeds that are there, the structure that's there, if it's sunny, if it's cloudy, there's a lot of things that can and do change fish behavior. And so having a bait that will present as best as possible in those situations will help you catch more fish. So having some versatility in it is great. And Jesse and I have been working in the past few years to not have like that one bait that we're constantly always throwing. We're trying to, expand our horizons a little bit, or learn new techniques, or go back to older techniques that we've kind of phased out of because they didn't stop working. We just stopped using them.
Yeah. And I think it's like very seasonal, right? Like I could literally say the same thing to people, and I have. If you're fishing like a shallow Kawartha lake where it's all lily pads and slop and like weeds, I have like all the tackle, but sometimes when I go in my canoe, I'll just go like after work and I'll just grab one tray, and that tray has legit hollow body frogs, a punching bait like a craw bait with a heavy tungsten, and then just like a flipping bait like another craw with a lighter weight. And that's all I use all day because that works every year in those situations. There's not much else you can chuck in those situations.
Yeah.
You can't just like, chuck a buzz bait over top of slop. So you can dial things down, but that only works certain times of the year. Like that would work great anytime from like June to September, maybe like early September. But after that, seasonally things change. So you have to definitely adapt. Think of lures as tools, right? Whatever tool works best in that situation. You don't have to have like 50 hammers when you're a carpenter, but you may have one or two different kinds for different things. And each one of those will work better for other things. Like you're not going to be like hammering a fence together with a tack hammer. And you're not going to be using, some fine carpentry stuff with a sledgehammer. So there's definitely view it as tools. And, you'd be one of those like Milwaukee pack-out guys that has like 50 tools to do one job. That's Andrew. You can do that. It's fine.
Sponsor us, Milwaukee.
I wish. The good old days.
But yeah, it's a good point. Is having one bait that you love is fantastic, and enjoy it, make use of it. We all pretty much have something that we love. You've heard it. I love chatterbaits, but there's lots of other stuff. I like having support baits. So if a good rule of thumb is have a bait that you love, you can throw a lot, but periodically throughout the day, or if it's slowing down, or you are fishing a different scenario where something else would make more sense, have like 3 other baits even. Just limit yourself still. 3 other baits that can do something a little bit differently, that you can fish differently. And then you might be able to make some better use of it. Like, for example, if you had a spinner bait, but then switched up, have a Ned rig, have a little flipping bait, and have a jerk bait. That gives you a good range of, you can fish now mid-water column, you can fish higher up, you can fish, wherever you want, through the weeds, on rocks. So there's a lot of different stuff where if you only had that spinner bait that day, yeah, you could let it helicopter down, but it's not going to be effective dragging along the bottom, really. You might happen to fish, but Ned rig would have been perfect to drag across those rocks,
Yeah.
So have something extra in your toolbox, as it were.
So the next one's I actually like this one. This was sent in by Rise and Find Fishing. He said the worst advice he's ever got was don't buy YouTube lures unless you fish the same water. Now, I think he meant that is bad advice. Like that's probably someone didn't say that to him, but that's actually, I get it for sure. So like a lot of YouTubers, like you watch fishing channels and a lot of them are in the States, right? Say you're into bass fishing and you're like, okay, I'm going to watch, Tactical Bass, and hey, it's Matt Allen from Tactical Bass. And today we're going to talk about, blah, blah, blah. And they live, wherever the heck they live down in the States. Or like you have YouTubers that are down in Florida and they're fishing for large amount down there. The lures that they recommend, the advice that he's saying that is not the best is to just dial in, like just hyper focus on those recommendations for Florida bass. When we live up in Ontario, we still have bass. They're not the same kind of bass. They're northern strain bass. They're not the big fat southern 10-pound bass. But you could see why that it may be a bit sketchy just to listen to everything that someone says when they're fishing like 20-hour drive away, right? So 3 reasons why this might be sketchy. Forage I'm going to say it correctly. Forage mismatch. So up here, we have a lot of forage that they don't have down there in Florida. So for instance, we have gobies. Like that's something that they don't have down there, I'm pretty sure. We have perch. You don't see perch down in Florida, but they have other things. They have shiners, like those big shiners and stuff that they use sometimes for live bait fishing. They have shad. They have all kinds of different bait that we necessarily don't have up here. So baits that maybe in some areas of the States, they have those big gizzard shads, right? And that's why they have a lot of those big glide baits that are just like, shad shaped. And they're deadly for that species. But if you chuck that up here, it may not have the best result. I'm not saying a bass won't hit that, because they'll hit it for sure. But it may not be the best thing, because we always know the phrase match the hatch, right? I think sometimes guys will be like, oh, you need to use a big bait to catch fish, but you should be fishing bait that is available for them that they normally would eat, because they're like, oh, that's something I eat. I normally eat 6-inch perch. They're going
That's
to kind
That's
of,
what they're looking for.
yeah, they're looking for 6-inch perch to eat. Now, if like a 14-inch perch swims by, if they're hungry, I'm not saying they're not going to eat it, but they might just be like, oh, that's too big. Like, I find that's true with musky fishing too. You don't always have to chuck the biggest baits. Another thing too is like water clarity. So oftentimes we think up here in Ontario, we have some of the best smallmouth bass fishing in the world. Like think of like the St. Lawrence River, for instance. It is gin clear. I had the opportunity to fish it 2 years ago with Waterwolf Mike, and I was blown away by how crystal clear it is. You could see like 20 feet down. It's like Simcoe. It's crazy. And the fish can see you too. So you need to like, finesse is super important. And you watch some bass fishing YouTube channels where they're fishing in like the southern states where the water's like chocolate milk. Like, oh, visibility ain't too good today. It's like literally 4 inches of visibility. I was like, how do you fish? Looks like they're fishing for catfish. They're catching bass on like lures. I'm like, what? Oh man. Also pressure difference. So like oftentimes we think the pressure in our lakes up here is bad. It is nothing at all compared to some of the bass fishing lakes that they have in the States. Like Lake Fork, a bunch of those like super popular bass lakes, they are absolutely hammered compared to the Kawartha lakes or any lakes in Ontario. Even the ones that are busier, you think of like, say the Kawartha lakes, you're like, oh, Lake Simcoe, that's heavily fished. It is for sure, but it's not compared to those lakes in the or in the United States for bass. So that's why some lures that may work down there or may work up here, it may not be exactly be able to mismatch them either way, for sure.
And it's important to think too, though, there's still stuff you can learn from these videos on YouTube and whatnot. Even from our podcast, even from our podcast, you can pick up the odd tidbit of knowledge. And some of those things is like you said before, is like we don't give out GPS coordinates like we've joked about before, but we try and teach different things where you can apply some of the more broader strokes. So, where fish might set up down in the States is, okay, well, what kind of depth are the bass trying to be in? What kind of forage or what kind of structure are they hiding around? What kind of speed or tree style are they using? Because maybe, and like many things on there, like the Tokyo rig or the Carolina rig, stuff like that, they're called after these areas because oftentimes they were invented there.
Yeah.
But guess what? We now see them being fished across all of the states, not just in Carolina. We fish it up here in Ontario, and it works well. So you can take some of the techniques that are used. Absolutely. That is transferable skills, transferable knowledge. A bass is going to they like to sit underneath the weeds down in the States. Guess where they are here in Ontario? Largemouth bass sit underneath the weeds here in Ontario when there's weeds in the lake. So there are things that you can take and can learn from it. Absolutely. But again, to take everything as, you need to buy this, this big bull shad color, hot honey shad color in this exact size, and you have to fish it here, specific just like this in this chocolate milk water when it's 42 degrees and the thermocline is sitting at like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You can't duplicate that when you are fishing a different lake. So there are things you can transfer some stuff. Don't try and replicate it though, especially if you're not on that water.
Yeah. And some of the best places though to get actual good advice is, it mentioned like local Facebook groups. There's lots of Facebook groups. I don't do Facebook. If you guys ever message me on Facebook, I won't respond because I'm never on there. But
Same.
I do
I'm trying to sell my boat and I don't respond. I'm sorry.
But yeah, there is a lot of Facebook groups that, I know there's one that's like, oh, Kawartha Muskie guys and, Kawartha Bass guys. And I'm sure some of them would be more than happy to give some advice. They're not going to, tell you the secret baits, but you can find that. But one thing that I found is go to a bait shop and actually spend some money there. And you would be surprised how much the guys open up. Like we go to this like tackle shop in Belleville, Pro Tackle. And the owner, Stacy, is like, he's a nice guy. I haven't really had too many conversations with him, but the guy's a hammer. Like guy's a hammer muskie angler. And, you walk in there and you just look around and, he doesn't really talk much to you. He's, busy putting lures away. As soon as he sees you put a bunch of stuff on the counter, he's like, hey, where are you fishing? You're like, oh, I'm fishing here. And he's like, oh, no, go here instead. And oh, no, get this color, get that. That's a great choice. Get this color though instead. It's the one to get. So you will get some legit, actual good advice from the tackle shop guys. And again, I know they're trying to sell product, but they would be happy if you have success, so you'll come back and buy more. That's how it works. So support your local tackle shops. But considering point one that we just talked about, don't buy too much, but buy just enough. It's a hard walk.
I learned a lesson the hard way. How old was I? 12, 13 or something like that. And Jesse will remember this. I had ordered a couple lures from the States that I had seen. YouTube was fresh. Like YouTube was new. And I saw these cool videos of this bait that they said would outfish live bait. Like it was so cool. It was a jointed, I'd never seen an articulated hard bait. And it had like 5 joints in it. And it mimicked a shad perfectly. Like it had a little black dot and it had little fins on it. And it was like really shallow, like a wake bait and then a diving bait. And it was like suspended. Oh, it was so cool.
I remember
it cost me $30 American each one. Then I had to pay for shipping up to Canada. It was like 90 something bucks of me when I made $20 a week.
And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. You know how many fish I caught on those?
Like one?
None. I fished those things for so long.
He did.
And I never caught squat. I'm like so mad.
I remember Andrew being like, look how real it looks. And I'd just be chucking a Mepps Aglia 3 and I'd just be smoking them. And he'd be like, my bait looks real. I'm like, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Just be careful what you try and buy offline.
Yeah. All right. So I was going to look at the next one. The next one is hooks are sharp out of the box. No need to sharpen them. That is the worst advice that Esox Hunter has got, or Essex Hunter. I'd say that's probably that one hits super hard because hooks are legit, depending on what you get. Okay. To be fair, hooks are very important to be sharp. Obviously, right, Andrew? Like,
get ready. Jesse's opinionated.
So to be fair, I'm going to break this down into normal lures and musky lures. So if you buy a normal bass lure and it's a quality lure, I'm not saying you bought one of those like Dollarama lures or some cheap lure Canadian Tire with like crappy hooks on it. But if you buy a quality lure, for instance, like this lure Andrew just got me, this is a Mega Bass jerkbait, the Kanata. It has legit razor, like needle sharp point hooks on it. I won't replace these. These are like, they're deadly sharp. They are sharp out of the pack for sure. But that's not always the case. When you buy musky lures, I guarantee 95% of the time, they come with hooks that, it's not that they're bad hooks, they just really need to be sharpened. Some musky baits come with hooks that are absolutely garbage, and you need to replace them with BKKs, right, Andrew? BKK. Yeah. There are some hooks, like, for instance, the hooks that Mike from Waterwolf Lures puts on his Shadzollas and stuff, they're great hooks. They just need a little bit of sharpening, and they're legit. They sharpen well. But some hooks, you get these hooks and they've got like this like shiny black coating on them. They don't sharpen well and they're trash. I'm like, if you're going to cast all day to possibly get one bite, I don't want to have a dull hook. Like, I don't want that. The fish of 10,000 casts, and then when he grabs it, the hooks aren't sharp and you don't even get him on the line. Man, I hate that. But you have to think of it though. Even if you have a sharp hook, Andrew, what are some things that could happen that could dull your hook?
You hit bottom with it, you hit a tree with it, even if you catch a fish with it.
Yeah.
All of those things can start to dull that hook point or roll it over because like really bony mouth and stuff like that on some of these fish, like a salmon, for instance, normally use pretty stout hooks, but you catch a few salmon and you'll notice that the hook point will start to roll over a bit. Or if you're going pike fishing and you're using, let's say a jerk bait, but it has, I would say more traditionally, like it has bass hooks on it, I would call them. And so those hook points, they'll start to get rolled over. And when they roll, they don't engage. They'll start to just like push against the skin and not actually puncture. If you get snagged on a rock, you hit a rock and it hits the hook point, guaranteed that's rolled. I guarantee it's rolled. So all those stuff, you have to take note. He's been really good at for quite a while. And I have been learning from him because I've missed some fish. I'm like, I haven't checked my hooks. And I got snagged like 3 times between that last fish and the one I just lost.
Yeah.
I guess I better sharpen these.
Sometimes you'll say, we're using musky fishing, for example, but say you're fishing like a dive and rise bait, a bait that dives down. It could hit into a rock and then float back up. That's to trigger a strike. You want your bait to hit the structure because it triggers strikes. But at the same time, sometimes I'll sharpen my hook and then like 10 minutes later, I'll look at my bait and the front hook is completely rolled over. I'm like, that front point is the main one that's going to go in a fish's mouth. And you're like, oh my goodness, you start sharpening, you sharpen it. And you could sharpen your bait multiple times an hour. But what would you rather do? Sharpen your hook and catch a fish, or have a fish just slap at it, or just like not get it fully in its mouth. And that one point that you needed to be sharp, just like it didn't penetrate enough. And then when that fish jumped and shook its head, the lure just flies out and you're like, dang it. Oh man. So my main advice is buy a hook sharpener, learn how to use it. It is not difficult to learn how to sharpen a hook. There's different opinions on how to do it correctly. I do it the Doug Wagner way. He's like a super awesome muskie guide up on Lake the Woods and different areas. I watched a video on how he sharpens his muskie hooks. I do it that way. They sharpen up nicely. Find the way that works best for you, but have a hook sharpener in your boat for any species. One species that I would say too, remember that day we went walleye fishing and we were fishing those snap jigs, and how you fish them is you bang them into the bottom, then you jerk them up, and then they glide back down into the bottom. So you're basically smacking rocks all day long. And the head of your jig is all chipped up. You're catching fish. You look at the point of your hook, and every so often you look at it and it's just dull as heck. So you start sharpening it. After that 2-day trip, I had this one jig and I had sharpened it so much that the hook was like half filed off. It was just like a little nub just above the barb. Anyway, sharpen your hooks, people. We don't tell you to do much things, but we tell you to do that.
And we had a podcast a while back where, like Jesse said, some hooks, they sharpen well. Some don't. A lot of it has to do with they're chemically sharpened because it's actually acid. They dip the hook in this chemical and it eats away at the steel. And they're really, really sharp out of the package. But when you try and start filing it down, the metal that's still on the tip of that hook is usually weakened because of that acid bath. Whereas if they're machined, like manually sharpened, those are really good to be able to continually sharpen all the time. So that's one thing, especially on musky hooks when they're larger and stuff like that. But some hooks will sharpen well. If you're finding that, hey, these aren't sharpening very well, it may literally be the hook. It may not be, you not knowing how to sharpen a hook, especially watched your videos and stuff. It may be something where you do have to change that trouble rather than just sharpen it.
Andrew's telling you you're not completely dumb. He's like, maybe the hook's the problem. You're a good guy.
So how about this one? This is from Fishboy Sully. Fish don't care about line. You don't need a leader. I've said that in circumstances, not as a blanket rule.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess that's the kind of thing. It could be true sometimes, but other times you could argue that it doesn't make a difference at all.
Yeah.
So this
if I'm fishing really stained water, I'll run straight braid to my bait. I don't care because they can't see anything. I can't see the line in the water. I don't think they'll be able to.
Yeah.
But sometimes a leader is not always about visibility either, though. A leader, who cares about, take the vision and the clarity outside of it. For example, salmon fishing. We often have our reels spooled up with braid, but we'll run a shock leader, it's called. And it's not so much about the salmon not seeing the braid, because we fish oftentimes at night, but they're not going to see the braid. They don't see anything. They're going off the vibration of the bait. But having that shock leader gives some stretch, whereas the braid doesn't stretch, but that mono or that fluoro can give some stretch and help keeps that fish pinned. It could be the abrasion. Could be the abrasion from the teeth itself, maybe not just the structure around, but for pike. You need it. If you're fishing for pike and you're like, I don't believe in leaders, tell me how expensive your jerkbait budget is for fishing for pike. Because I bet you're only buying Husky jerks and not some higher end baits, because you are losing them.
Yeah.
But like pike and muskie, you have to use leaders in order to protect your baits. So is there a time where you don't need a leader? Absolutely. Like I said, if it's dirty water, really heavy cover where, again, flipping for bass, oftentimes we don't fish a leader. Straight braid, 50-pound braid right to a heavy tungsten weight, and you just shoot it down the hole. They're not picking up. They don't have the time for those reaction to do anything. Or like a moving bait, sometimes even trolling, like fast troll. But again, depending on the species, if they're prone to following or stuff like that, even musky fishing, they'll use a long leader because it will give them the opportunity to follow that bait and then hopefully not see that leader line. So there are different things that you can keep in mind. But if you want to try it out, by all means, if you go to a spot and you're like, I don't think leaders work, fish this spot for like half an hour and then put on a leader and then fish that spot again. Maybe you'll catch something. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll, for your confidence, you think you don't need it. You'll still catch fish without leaders if you're concerned about the visibility side of it. But maybe if you try it, you'll see you catch more. Maybe you caught the one that was line shy before that you weren't catching. So give it a shot. But yeah, or maybe you're not fishing really clear lakes. It's a humbling experience.
For sure. Yeah. Again, growing up steelhead fishing, obviously we used fluorocarbon. Like fluorocarbon started becoming popular, I think, when I was like in my early teens. Before it was starting to get popular, but we used to fish a lot of mono before that, like mono leaders. But as soon as fluorocarbon became a thing, like we always used fluorocarbon leaders over mono because it was invisible or super clear underwater, right? But I have proved to myself many times that when the bite was super tough, the water was gin clear. Like when you go down to the creek and it hasn't rained and the water's that, that killer color, it's a slightly green after it rained, the fish are just going to slam it. Not like that at all. Like I'm talking gin clear water and you see the fish and they can see you and you have to drop down to the tiniest bead or a little tiny fly and you're using 3-pound fluorocarbon just to get a bite. Does it have to do just with the visibility? I don't think so. When you're drifting in the water, there's also resistance on the line, right? So when you're drifting with 3-pound line, there's less resistance at drifting through the current than if, say, you're using 8-pound line because that's thicker, right? So there's more resistance going down. So a lighter line is more natural. It allowed the bait to just be slightly more natural going through the water. Does that make a difference? I found it did, because I remember one time these guys were fishing this hole and you could see these two big steelhead sitting behind this rock and they were just drifting and nothing. And they were using a bead. I dropped down to a 6-millimeter bead and a 3-pound leader. And on my second drift, I smacked one after they left and had been fishing there for like 45 minutes to an hour. So I was like, maybe I just had it at the perfect depth. I don't know. These guys look like they knew they were doing, but maybe they were using a slightly thicker line or they were using mono. I don't know. But I have a feeling in super pressured water and clear water, leaders 100% make a difference. But again, if you're fishing in slop, like, dude, you look in that, it's all like a jumble of green crap and stuff. If they see some like green line in the water, they probably just think it's like a piece of grass.
Yeah.
If at all, like you said, the bait just shoots down. They're not going to be like in slow motion, like the flash being like, wait a second, what's that line?
Kind of on the same line of thought, Kyle also submitted one of people saying you need a steel leader for walleye because they have teeth. Huh. And that one there, I was confused when I was, not to like take a dump on this person who said this, but when I was a kid, I thought the same thing. Then I grew up. But the biggest thing is, yes, there are teeth, but like if you were to say, oh, do we need to use steel floss to floss our teeth? No, because it just slides between it. It's not going to cut the floss just because it's not steel,
Yeah.
So same thing with walleye. They have teeth. They're sharp if you shove you can't lip them. You're going to get cut and your thumb get punctured. But you need steel leader for pike and muskie because those teeth are actually like razor blades on their edge, whereas walleye teeth are conical. They're just little cones sticking up. So there's no sharp edge on the outside. It's just the tips of their teeth that have that point, that sharpness to it.
Thank goodness.
So, yes, which is why you can lip pike. But what happens oftentimes with walleye, why people will think, oh, I got bit off by this walleye, is often not from their teeth rubbing against the line, but it's actually because of where you're fishing it. There's lots of mussels, lots of rocks down there, and that can weaken the line. If the line is getting abrasions, it can really start to weaken and lose its strength. Or you're using perhaps too light of a line for the structure that's around there. So again, if you have to always compensate for where you're fishing that you might have some abrasion, and if you're not, you might not have enough or strong enough line to handle any abrasion, and then you're going to get snapped off. And it may look like, oh, they were chewing on it, but it could have just been your line rubbing against rocks and mussels as you're dragging your jig along the bottom.
Or you were using 2-pound test to try to break the IFGA record for walleye fishing.
Absolutely. If you are using, the other thing to keep in mind, walleye have a very good eyesight. Like you were saying, leaders in clear water and stuff, you want to be able to, like we feel they do make a difference. Walleye as well, especially if they're in clear water, they have very good eyesight. They can be line shy. But if you are concerned about your bait coming off and you're in a body of water that has, for every walleye you catch 3 pike, and you're sick of being bit off, maybe you have to use a thicker fluorocarbon leader, something that's still clear but has a bit more abrasion resistance on it, something like that. Maybe don't go steel because you still want to target those walleyes. So there are some other options that you can use, but for the walleye themselves, chances are you're likely not going to get bit off by their teeth slicing through your line, just because they don't have that slicing action. It's more like a stabby action.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I've never been bit off by a walleye, because maybe I have, and then just blamed it on a pike. It's like, oh, that's a dang pike. And it was just a giant walleye.
Like if they're hooked back and the line's going across like a bunch of points of teeth across their head that are shaking back and forth, yeah, it can absolutely do that. But at the same time, a lot of the time, even if they're hooked further back, the line like finds a path through the teeth and it's pulling them up against the top, and that line is essentially threaded through a whole bunch of pylons or cones that are on the top. So it shouldn't really, which is why a lot of guys have no issue fishing 6 or 8 pound fluoro for walleye, and they're catching 30 inches and stuff. So
yeah, it's true. I was going to say, I did use a steel leader to catch my biggest walleye because I was pike fishing. I was pike fishing back in the day. Yeah, I was pike fishing with a big pike spinnerbait, like a big spinnerbait with a big twister tail on it. I hooked this fish. This was this was 20 years ago, literally. I was like 15. And I hooked this fish and it's fighting deep. We're fishing like a bay that we normally fish for pike. And I've never seen a walleye in there in my life. And this fish is fighting deep. And it's like, I'm like, this is like a giant pike, because it was fishing super deep and it wouldn't come up. Finally, it came up and I saw it was a big walleye, 29-inch walleye. I was like, oh my goodness. I literally dove in the water and got it. It's like fishing from shore. It was like this weird little cliff. I was like, I don't care. Got 2 huge suckers. My boots were soaked. I came up, I pulled it out of the water. Biggest walleye I've ever caught. And in an area where I've never seen a walleye in my life before, just randomly. But I was using a steel leader. Thank goodness, because you never know. It could have bit right through it, Andrew.
Yeah. I was using a fluoro leader fishing a big blade chatterbait when I caught my PB walleye. It was 24 inches.
We were pike fishing, weren't we?
We were pike fishing.
Oh, yeah, we were.
So again, walleye will still bite something with a leader, but it may not be necessary while targeting them. That's all.
Yeah, true. I think a lot of things will bite things when you're using a leader in the right circumstances. All right, here's another one that I really identify with, because I need to really work on this. And this was submitted by Canadian Women of the Outdoors. They also have a podcast. Make sure you check them out. I'll link them below in the show notes. We like to support all of our local Ontario-based podcasts as well. So she said that the worst advice she ever got was to use the biggest lures to catch big fish. And I'm sure we've all heard that, use big baits and catch big fish. I think that's true sometimes, right? Like a lot of these are true sometimes, but at the same time, not always true, right? We have caught some big fish on big lures, but we've also caught some big fish on tiny lures. Hilariously
tiny. And we've caught small fish on big lures.
Mostly that's what happens. Like, I'm not joking. When I'm muskie fishing, I'm catching bass on the muskie lures. And then when I'm bass fishing, I'm catching muskie on the bass lures. I'm like, what were you thinking? And it's a tiny lure. It'll be like a tiny hula popper or like a tiny little jerkbait. The big muskie grabs it, or a big pike. And then when you're legit ice fishing for perch, remember that big pike I pulled out of Simcoe? I was jigging for perch on 3-pound line with a little tiny Castmaster jigging spoon with a minnow head on it. This huge northern comes up and just grabs it. I fight this thing forever, gets through the hole. Maybe it was an IGFA record, probably not. And it barely fit through the hole. And I was like, what were you thinking? This bait's literally the size of like your thumbnail. This pike is huge. I couldn't even lift it out. Oh man. So yeah, again.
It's like when I was at the cottage and I was fishing, like I'm trying to target 30+ inch pike. And by fishing like 11-inch suics and stuff like that, like big dive and rises, giant glides, and I didn't catch a single pike over 22 inches.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on. But then when I go out there and I fish like a chatterbait or an inline spinner, I'll start smashing, 32-inch pike. And I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I feel like you just get in your mindset that you want to catch fish on a certain bait.
Yes.
And it may not be the best bait for the situation. Even muskie fishing, you're like, oh, I'm going to go and chuck this huge, 1/2-pound bait, and I'm going to grind and catch that big one. And then you see someone who's like, no, I was just using a small, 8 bucktail and Mepps muskie killer even, and that's what they smoked the fish on. So it really dictates, especially in pressured water, I find. For us, fishing for muskie, a lot of the bigger muskie that we've caught haven't necessarily been caught on giant baits per se, like not giant baits. I know there's a few guys out there that fish almost exclusively like giant baits, and they fish a lot to get a few bites, but with the bites they do get are generally pretty uninspiring. But when you're an average guy like me, I just like getting bites. So we like to use, normal sized baits. But why is using big baits for big fish bad advice sometimes? Again, it could be good, but it could be bad because big fish eat small prey consistently. So like, again, it depends where you are, but in the Kawarthas, say like muskie, they eat a lot of like perch and sunfish and small bass. They're not eating like giant shad like they will in Lake St. Clair. So chucking a big shad sized bait, it's not something they're used to seeing. I'm not saying they won't hit it, but they're more used to eating small forage. That may be what they're keyed in on eating. It's surprising. Even some of the big pike, we've not giant pike, but we keep pike in the Kawarthas because we like to kill the population slowly. We eat them, of course. But when you gut them, you look in their belly, and even some of the bigger pike, they have tiny minnows in their belly, like tiny ones. You're like,
Yeah.
It's like a
Tiny minnows and then like a half-pound bullfrog.
yeah. What are some bad things about using big baits though? Yeah, so like the forage size oftentimes dictates success. So like using a big bait may not even be relevant in the lake you're fishing. And big lures can oftentimes fatigue you. So we know this. When you chuck some big baits, and we're not even chucking the big ones.
My shoulder's still sore from the fall.
Yeah. We went out a few months ago. We caught what was it, 4?
5 that day.
5. Yeah, it was a good day. And we legit weren't chucking big baits. I think the baits we were fishing were like maybe 8 or 9 ounces. So like half a pound. And man, my shoulders, it's just recovered now. But there are guys out there, they have the pounder, which is almost a pound. And then they have the pound and a halfer. Like that thing's huge. Oh man, I don't know what to do. I would just troll. I can't chuck baits that big.
I'd fish it using the downrigger. Like that's at that point.
Yeah.
Just put some hooks in a cannonball and be like, I'm trolling for muskie.
Good times to use big baits though. Oftentimes it may be better to use a larger bait in low light, dirty water. Often at night, I like to use a slightly larger bait because it gives the fish a little bit more to key in on because they can't really see as well at night, obviously. And then you have the fall feed. And this goes for a lot of fish, but especially muskie fishing and pike fishing. When they start feeding up for the winter, in the fall, you can get away with using a pretty sizable bait. And even in the fall, when we were out fishing, like what was the smallest bait we were using? You were using that big beaver. That's got to be what, a foot long at least?
Yeah, it's 12 inches long.
Yeah.
And fishing the dying dog, which is 14 inches long. I think the beaver, I think the glides are the shortest things we're using. We use like 9-inch glides.
Yeah. So you can get away with using, and again, you can catch some pretty small fish. I was catching small, like high 20 to 30-inch muskie on these big baits. They'd come out and just decimate it. They don't care, but it's always good.
Yeah.
Where would using smaller baits shine? Well, clear water. We already talked about that. Pressured lakes. A lot of the lakes that we fish around here, they get a lot of fishing pressure. Cold fronts. That's another big one because that's usually when me and Andrew go fishing. We have a fishing trip planned or a camping trip. It's a cold front, which is the worst.
What do you mean usually? Come on, Jesse.
Every time.
Usually.
Sorry, every time.
time.
So anyway, make sure you have a selection of big and small baits, and then you can be successful. It's funny, I actually had someone say, we're not going to go into this one, but the worst advice that this guy named Will got, he said that the worst advice he got was to catch bass, you should use a bulldog. And a bulldog is like a huge musky rubber bait. I just picture the guy who told him that was just some total idiot that was just like, heh, idiot. See how much time this guy wastes.
Get out of my lake.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, like sometimes I'll be at a boat launch and I'm coming in and I had a good day. Like I'm out in my canoe, I'm loading up and someone will be like, oh, how's the fishing in this lake? And they're just like walking by. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. You know what I mean?
You got to play it down.
Yeah. It's like, I don't want them fishing. Like, I don't want them coming back here, but I'm saying, so I feel like maybe people do that. Maybe people do that with like, baits. They're like, yeah, you should use this. And it's just like, it sucks, but okay.
The best thing is to recommend stuff, like recommend an area or a bait just because you want to know if it works or not, but make someone else do the legwork. That's the beauty of that scenario.
That's true.
Before we go to, I figure we'll do one more at the very end.
Okay.
But before we do that, we do have some fishing news. Stuff that's happened recently.
Yeah, so it's 2026 now, and we're going to start seeing some new products come out. I always try to keep up on like new products coming out. Again, try not to buy too much gear, but it's always exciting when, you have a favorite brand.
Please see first advice.
Yeah, please see number 1. But every time we do an episode, if anything new comes out that's worth talking about, I'm going to try to keep you guys up to date if you're not like a tackle junkie. But if you are looking to buy some new gear, 2026 is going to be good. The only bad thing about it is a lot of the fishing stuff went up in price, unfortunately. And a lot of this stuff is hard to get. So my advice would be, if you see it and you want it, don't wait, just go buy it. Unfortunately, like I've learned that the hard way. Things are hard to find. So if you have something specific you want to get and you're like, oh, this store, Ganyon's has one, go buy it. Don't wait, just buy it.
Restocking this year is probably going to be
Yeah. And expensive. Just talking about Shimano, we like all different brands. I've been using my first good reel I ever bought was a Shimano Sahara spinning reel.
Yep.
Yeah. And I have a lot of Stradics, and I love Shimano. I love Daiwa. I like a lot of reel companies and rod companies, but Shimano always has a soft spot for me. But they have a lot of new products coming out. I thought I'd just talk about some. Again, we're not affiliated with Shimano or anything. Shimano, potato. Some guys are like, you can't call it Shimano.
That's what I say, Shimano.
Yeah. Andrew will call it Shimano. I'll call it Shimano. We got it covered, okay? So they actually have a few cool things. I'm only going to mention the relevant ones. I'm not going to talk about... It
depends on talking about fishing stuff or bike gears.
Yeah.
And, one's Shimano, one's Shimano. Depends on which hobby they're in.
Average Ontario cyclist. Just kidding. So big news with Shimano, 2026, we finally have the redesign of the Tranx 400, which is a very popular muskie. It's a saltwater reel, but a lot of muskie guys use it. They redesigned the 300, which I have the old 300. Fantastic. Never had a problem with it. I've had that for 6-7 years. It's been great. They redesigned the 300 last year. I knew they'd redesign the 400 eventually. The 400 is getting redesigned. It has a few tweaks. It's an older, like the reel's been out 7 or 8 years. So it was up for an update. It looks good. I'm sure the price went up too, but whatever. They have a new reel, the Next Save, which is, I don't know if I pronounced that right, but from what I'm understanding, it's a reel that's like, I think it's like $100-ish, $120, something like that. It looks pretty good. It's a reel that has already existed, but they updated it. It looks much better. It looks like it has a few new features. That's awesome. But the thing I wanted to mostly talk about is the new rods that they have. So I have a bunch of higher end Shimano rods like X Prides and stuff, but the Zodius is an awesome rod. If you're familiar with it, it's the black rod with the red. It looks pretty sick.
Yep.
They redesigned it. Now it's called the Zodius B. It's black. It's blacked out. Like if Batman was buying rods, he'd get this rod. It looks sick. It's got like this metal nut. It's got a monocoque handle. The back handle is a cork.
Get my Zodius.
Get the Zodius. Which one, sir? But it's got that monocoque handle at the back. So the whole back, instead of cork or like foam, it's pure graphite. So you feel it's super sensitive. This is a high-end rod. It's like $400. But that's a new rod coming out, spinning and casting. Now the Compris, those are rods that we've had a few times, Andrew. I still have. They have musky rods, walleye rods, bass rods.
I have a short musky rod of that. I actually like it a lot.
Yep. So that they're all redesigned for 2020. They have one called the Compris Light, and it's like a series of like finesse style rods. Now, these rods are also, I don't know the pricing because it hasn't mentioned them yet in Canada, but they should be less than $200. I don't know exactly how much, but they have the Compris Light, and it's a bunch of like finesse rods, like medium lights, and ultra lights. It looks pretty good. They redesigned them. They're not like that weird green anymore. They're more of like a dark emerald with like a weird like diamond wrap on it. Looks very cool. They also have completely redesigned the Compris musky rods, which has always been one of the best muskie rods you could buy in the $200 price point. So if you're looking to get a new rod, maybe you got the new Tranx and you want to get a new rod, the Compris are really nice. I have one that I use every year still. It's one of the green ones.
Or you wait till when it shows up on a return, brand new but returned on a 50% off sale, and you get it for $60.
Not everyone's as lucky as you, Andrew. And then the Compris Walleye series too, if you're a walleye guy or girl, whole series of walleye rods completely redesigned. I'm looking forward. They just announced this the other day. I'm looking forward to walking into Gagnon soon and seeing all these rods, just picking them up, wiggling, like up and down the aisle, being like sick, and then being like, I don't need it. Yeah.
There's me and Jesse. I'm on his shoulders like General Grievous, just like whipping rods around, like yes,
do it.
There's Justin over at Gagnon's, be like, hello there.
So anyway, there's a bunch of cool stuff coming out. If you're looking to get some gear, keep your eyes peeled for that. The Shimano stuff looks pretty good. We are going to, another thing that I wanted to mention this episode is we actually got new mics, which is pretty exciting. So we got these new DJI
Not
mics.
these that you're hearing now.
No.
These are the regular ones.
Yeah, we got these little, if
I sound worse this time, it's because it's the same mic, but I'm sick.
Andrew's always sick in the head. But yeah, we've had clip-on DJI mics for a while. We've done shows with them. We had like the first gen ones, which aren't the best. They don't have any noise cancellation. But now technology has advanced so much in the last 4 years that the new ones that I just got, they have noise cancellation. They sound really good, even in a crowd. So we're going to be doing some recordings out at fishing shows, out on the lake, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be adding some extra bonus stuff into the podcast this year. So that's exciting. And, we had some really good feedback about our live on the lake episode that we did for Muskie. I thought it was going to be weird. I had a bunch of people being like, that was great. It was like being fishing with you guys. I was like, yeah, okay, good. Because like me and Andrew were just like floating down this river fishing, just talking to ourselves. And people are just like staring at us. It's like, who are those guys talking to? I was like, anyway, people. And they're like, what? But I think they thought that we were crazy. So they gave us a wide berth, which was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all the news. That's not really news.
No one yelled at us for fishing their docks that day.
Yeah.
Don't go outside, Margaret. They're crazy.
It's true. So we got one left. Which one are you going to do?
You know which one I'm going to do. Jesse's like, oh no, I shouldn't have put that in here.
Go for it.
This is from Getney Outdoors. The advice was keeping worms in your mouth stops them from freezing. It's true.
It is true, I'm sure.
That is a factual statement. But, and again, why would you do this? You might think, why? Is it because you got hungry? Maybe. But in reality, it's probably because if it's freezing out and you're fishing, the last open stream before it freezes over, then likely your worms will be dead every time you pull them out of the package. So if you keep them in your mouth, they'll stay alive in a moist, humid environment, just like what they're used to in the middle of summer. And you get these nice wiggling, squirming worm that you can put on your hook as you come out of your mouth. Perfect.
How do you stop them from going down?
You try.
So it's a snack too.
Exactly. So why is it bad to do this? They're worms. I'm not sure if you know this, but worms are also kind of parasites sometimes, so don't risk it. There are better options than storing things in your mouth just to keep them from freezing. Back in the day, yeah, it was probably something that they did. They did a lot of things back in the day that were definitely weird and odd and stuff that we just don't do anymore. I mean, back in like Egyptian times, it was thought that if you get a cut, what you should do is rub some poop in the wound. And that helps. Like, we've learned since then. Don't put worms in your mouth. So what does work, that's a better option, is using a pocket, not the fleshy pocket that's in your face, but maybe the pocket that's inside your coat jacket. So you put your worms in there, it's insulated, stays warmer. Have an insulated bait container. Heck, put it in a Yeti thermos or something. Like, just do something other than your mouth. But another thing is minimize opening the container, because they are insulated themselves. So as long as you're not leaving it open, keep it out of the wind. Even your plastics, they can get really stiff or hard if they start to freeze, depending on what they're coated in, stuff like that. It can start to crystallize in those instances. But yeah, it's better options than that. So just remember, on that note, when someone gives you advice, they may be idiots. You don't have to take it, and there may be a better way of doing things. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that one just really like clearly showcased for us. But that's the biggest takeaway we can have. Most of the stuff that we talked about today is things where yes, it could be true in some instances, but is there a better way to do it? Probably. Can you be more versatile and do other things and still have a success? Absolutely. Can you be stuck in ways and still catch fish because you're stubborn? Yeah, Jesse and I are proof of that.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, that's kind of today's episode. We did have some other stuff, so anyone who did write in, just because we didn't feature it, doesn't mean that we didn't enjoy it. We did read them all personally, and it was great, and we just featured some of our favorite ones here on the podcast. Please do so again in the future. Anytime we prompt, we love getting feedback from you guys. So if you have the opportunity, if you're especially a regular subscriber, if you've already subscribed, fantastic. If you haven't, what does they say? Like, click that bell or whatever. I don't know. But I think that's YouTube. Listen on Spotify. Jesse does a really good job on the Spotify edit.
Yeah.
But yeah, leave us a review. Give us some feedback. We love to hear that. And again, with we're making some changes to the podcast again this year. We still want all the content to be relatable to you guys. So we're excited for that as, a couple fishing loons, but we're still average anglers. But before we clock out today, we do have, as tradition states, see, some things don't change, and I think Jesse's forgotten. We have the quote of the week.
Oh, man.
We've changed the name, but we've kept all the heartache.
All right. I think the quote of the week has to be, some anglers don't learn from experience. They just repeat it louder.